to today's counselling workshop on teaching others to amplify voices which promote well-being. Whether you're already working in counselling or pastoral care or looking to get some training in that area, we really hope that you find this morning encouraging and inspiring. Well, my name is Daisy. I'm the Student Services Supervisor here at the college. Today we'll be hearing from Dr. Julie Morsillo, Community Psychologist and Counselling Coordinator at Eastern. Julie has 20 years of experience in counselling and pastoral care work in both private practice, public schools, clinical and community settings. Julie coordinates our counselling courses here at Eastern, the Bachelor of Applied Social Science and our Master of Community Counselling, which you'll hear a bit about later as well. Julie will be sharing for us for about 45 minutes, followed by a time for questions. So please use the Q&A box on your screen to ask any questions you might have. Please also note that this session is being recorded, so if you know of someone who may want to watch or you can't stay for the whole thing, recordings will be available at a later date. So please ensure that you fill out the Connect form on the Virtual Open Week website to get the links to those recordings. So it's now my pleasure to hand over to Julie.
Thanks, Daisy. Thanks for that lovely introduction. And thanks those of you who are listening. This is all about listening, so I guess it's quite apt. I wish I could see you all, but hey, if you join the counselling program next year, we'll be able to see each other properly and really get together and have a good time. So yes, this morning I thought we would talk about teaching others to amplify their voices that promote well-being. So as a community psychologist and a counselling lecturer, I want to talk about how we can encourage people to avoid fixating on their destructive voices and listen to the positive voices that promote a sense of well-being. So I'm just going to share my screen so you can see my PowerPoints and see something a bit interesting than just looking at me all the time. So I'm sharing my screen. And then I'll go to play from start. Hopefully you can all see that. Counselling at Eastern. So that's me, Julie Morsillo, community psychologist, and I teach at Eastern. And we have programs in counselling that we'll talk more about later. Now let's work out a way to get this to the next slide. Oh yeah, there it is. So we're going to talk about listening to helpful voices for a sense of well-being. So who are you listening to? In our counselling course, we help people to work out ways to support other people, whether you're a counsellor, a pastor, a youth worker, a community worker, in whatever way you can use counselling skills to support others around you that are in need. And hey, we're all in need at some time, aren't we? So it's about supporting each other too at times. So we often find ourselves caring for people who are quite disturbed by the negative words of others that ring loudly in their minds. Often these negative external voices can become internalised, leading to a myriad of negative feelings and ultimately an unhealthy sense of self. Our job as counsellors and pastoral carers is to build up discouraged individuals and help them to find and listen to positive voices and experiences in their lives. In our roles, our ultimate example, of course, is that of Jesus, who not only showed much compassion and care for those in need, but spoke truth and light into people's lives. So sadly, we often have running around our head, like a broken record, our negative voices from the past. And people can get fixated on this, and we all do at times. Firstly, negative voices from our parents, our family, our extended family, later our peers, our friends, our partners, and those in authority, teachers and other authority figures. These negative voices can become quite overpowering for us at times. When we hear similar messages over and over that are negative, messages like, oh, you are just so bad, you are just not good enough, you make me so angry, or whatever, you know the kind of things. Just do what I say, not what I do. Or I hate you. Really, that person is hating the whole world. They're just taking it out on you. But they can feel so bad and so personal and so terrible, even though it's often part of something much bigger. And we are made to feel uncomfortable and made to feel like we are not worthy, we are not good enough, that we must have done something wrong. And especially when we're children, it becomes quite overwhelming because it becomes a big part of our lives. And it can create great fear. And it could lead to guilt and shame, and leading to anger that cannot or should not be expressed. This becomes internalized into depression or anxiety, often leading to lashing out or to underperforming or self-harm or just plain giving up. Some children have been more traumatized than others. We all have our moments where we have difficult times in our childhood, but people that are extremely traumatized in extreme poverty or imprisoned or sexually abused or extreme physical abuse, or children that are just plain afraid of their parents who are extremely authoritarian, or there's a lot of conflict in the family, can become strongly affected by the voices around them, that they can become permanently traumatized, sadly. As a child, they have so few ways of responding, so little power, and so little critical thinking capacity and ability to do much about ways to respond, so little power, so little ways to change things. So they often take on the guilt and shame this causes into themselves, believing that they caused it, or they are bad or deserve it, instead of the blame being placed on the perpetrators where it truly belongs. Sadly, for example, we are now hearing of 5 to 10-year-old children trying to suicide in refugee camps, which in the past was virtually unheard of in children so young. So sadly, childhood trauma can have profound effects. These external voices that we hear, if we hear them over and often enough, often become internalized, so that we hear them over and over in our heads. We're always hearing things in our heads. And I'm not just talking about people that are schizophrenic that hear loud voices, but just in everyday life, we are listening to things. And when we go to do something, often we are stopped or hindered or gasp at the remembrance of all those negative voices in our heads, in our thinking, and that affects our behaviour and can adversely affect our relationships. We often believe those voices that we hear, those things we have heard over and over when we were young or at present, even though in some sense we know it is someone else's voices and it is their problem. At times it can feel overwhelming and we take it onto ourselves, particularly if it started when we were children with such negativity, or particularly if we've had terrible crisis or trauma. We take it into ourselves thinking that we are the ones that are bad, even though it's the person around us that are doing bad things by saying those bad things. We often take it onto ourselves, sadly. And if it is too bad and too much terrible trauma, we can have permanent damage and become hypervigilant, where we're constantly waiting for the next time that we get hurt physically or emotionally, and have nightmares, panic attacks, flashbacks, unable to sleep. And that if that becomes more permanent, we call it post-traumatic stress disorder. We talk about the body remembers. Babette Rothschild writes a lot about this. So yeah, it can get quite bad. Loud voices can create great fear and anger, and then we don't know what to do with that. It becomes so loud and constant, it drowns out any present positive voices, and can cause people to self-harm or try and suicide, or try and block out the voices with alcohol or other means. or other kind of behaviours. But often that backfires, of course, and makes them feel even worse when they try and self-medicate. And so it becomes a vicious cycle of sadness and despair. But however, there are different ways that we can respond to internal voices. When we're little, it's very hard to know of alternate ways, but as we get older, with much help, we can learn different ways to respond. We can learn to resist, but often that still can create quite distress and anger. What's that sound that I think in there? Finding and honing your inner voice is a skill set one must practice at listening and paying attention. Not easy stuff though. Or people become overwhelmed and ashamed and anxious and depressed, as I said before. Shame says not good enough. Love says it's all good. But often we get stuck in that feeling of not good enough. And different people with different personalities respond in different ways too. Some people with what I call an independent spirit can get stubbornly say, well, I'm just not going to listen to you and I'm going to just try and work things out myself and resist those voices, but still often with a fair bit of anger and frustration. But that can be turned to good too if they get good support and become entrepreneurial and creative and go far in life because they're tenacious with good mentoring support. However, if they don't have good support, the alternative can happen and they just become very angry and frustrated and lash out at authority figures, and they need more support to get back on track. To change and to use that independent spirit for something good. Or there's what I call the sensitive souls at the other end of the spectrum, personalities that are sensitive and really find it hard and overwhelming to be criticised. And they manage that by turning in on themselves to get out of the chaos of the world and the loudness of the bad environment, become anxious and depressed, self-harming or suicidal. So yeah, there's lots of things that can happen that make life difficult for people. But there is good news. We can help people. Wait a minute, I'm trying to get on to the next slide. Oh, okay. There are ways that we can help people with these voices and help them work out different ways to respond as adults. And that's where good counselling and good pastoral care can come in. We can help people to realise that, yes, we all hear some voices, but we can decide what to do with that. We can hear and decide what to do with that. We can listen and take note or reject. We can obey or we can refuse. On the little poster here I've got on the side from Viktor Frankl, some of you might have heard about him before, that amazing researcher and I think he was a psychologist who ended up in a concentration camp. And he had to decide his attitude. He couldn't decide too much he couldn't change his environment. He couldn't change the people who he was with. He couldn't change what was happening, but he could change his attitude. And so he decided to make the most of it. But he came up with this saying from that experience: between the stimulus and the response, so the stimulus of something negative happening to us or something positive, but we're talking at the moment of negative voices, between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So through his terrible time of being in a concentration camp, Viktor Frankl realised that while he couldn't change what was happening or escape the bad things around him or escape the negative voices around him, he could change his attitude and escape in a different kind of way. He could decide how to respond to that, how to respond to the situation. And his response was, I'm going to make the most of this. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to help others to get through this and give what I can to others and tell myself I must get through this, so that I can learn from this experience and then help others from this experience, which he did, although of course many people around him didn't, including his own family members, sadly. But we have a responsibility to choose our response. And we have a responsibility as counsellors and carers to help others to choose their response, which can be so difficult if the negativity started when they were particularly young. There's a particularly interesting, reasonably new approach, well, in the last, in the last 12 years, called the myriad approach, to help people that experience extremely loud voices to the point where they have voices in their head developed from their negative voices from when they were young, but they're developed into actual strong voices where they imagine different people in their head. And he's worked out a way to help them by accepting and working with the voices, as I've got down there, accepting and working with the voices, the myriad approach. And they talk about helping people to think about hearing the voice. You listen to the voice. Instead of trying to reject everything outright, you listen and decide which things to listen to further, because sometimes the voices might have some helpful hints. But mostly you decide, oh, will I accept or reject? Or will I obey or refuse? And think about, well, if a friend told you, come on, let's be daredevils and jump off this cliff, would you just agree with it and go with it and obey? Or would you think about, oh, wait a minute, is this going to be good for me or not? I don't really want to die. So yeah, you do. You can choose how to respond to the different voices, and you can choose how much time you spend listening to those voices. Now, here is something along those lines that I really like. I remember this metaphor of being the driver in your own bus, that I heard this when I was doing my early studies in counselling and psychology in my undergraduate back in the 80s. And I thought it was amazing. I'd never heard of it before. When the lecturer said, you need to imagine yourself driving a bus. You are the driver and the bus is your life. You decide where to drive that bus. Don't let someone else decide for you. You are the driver of the bus. You decide who's going to be in the bus, voices behind you, listening, telling you what to do, and you decide which ones to listen to or not. If some of them tell you, go drive over that cliff, are you going to do it? No, because you're the driver of the bus. If they tell you you're useless, you go, no, I'm driving this bus. I think I know what I'm doing. So you are the driver of your bus and you decide. I just found the other day this interesting set of 10 rules that I thought was a little bit cute, from a website called The Energy Bus. You can look up yourself if you like. I've got the website down there. 10 rules for the ride of your life. You're the driver of the bus. Number 2, desire, vision and focus. Move your bus in the right direction. So you decide which way you want to go with your life, not the people that are around you. You might listen to their advice sometimes, but sometimes you will go your own way. Fuel your ride with positive energy. So we all need fuel for the ride. We need to put positive things in our life that I'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. We need to invite people into your bus and share your vision for the bus ahead. But invite people into your life who you want to. Those that you don't want to listen to, you leave them out on one of the bus stops and leave them on the sideline. Don't listen to them too much. Don't waste your energy on those who don't get on your bus. Or those who have tried to hop on your bus, but they're telling you some weird things. Don't waste your energy on them. Post a sign that says no energy vampires allowed. I thought that was a bit funny. Number 7, enthusiasm attracts more passengers and energizes them during the ride. So if you have enthusiasm and positivity and try and think of positive ways to do things, you'll attract more people like that around you. Or if you join other groups that do that you can all do it together, can really help. And we'll talk more about that in a minute too. Love your passengers, so love the people around you. Drive with purpose, have fun and enjoy the ride. I thought that was pretty cute. So let's talk more about that, listening to the positive voices for support. So children who have parents that are positive, caring, affirming messages with firm boundaries, but still caring and calm, can have the positive voices stay with them and help them through trials and tribulations in life. Also, they tend to be drawn to friends and caring, positive, caring voices to support them as well. However, as adults, even if we had negative voices speaking to us as a child, we can now look for good support and look for people with positive voices around us. Support from good friends, good counselling, good community support, perhaps a church community or some other caring community that you can learn from and listen to and have caring voices to change our self-image and take away the guilt and the shame. We can think of, and that's what we can do in counselling too, we can help others, because often it's a hard journey if people have started in such a negative place, but we can help them to think of creative things and helpful attitudes. Listen to the creative and helpful voices to find your own redemptive story. And we can do that by helping them to find hope in the natural and creative world around them. Listen to the sounds of nature. Go for that walk in the bush. Have that walk, even in this time when we're not allowed to get together in friends, we can go for a walk. I need to go for a walk in a park every day. That's what helps my well-being. That's what feeds my soul. And that's what I often encourage my clients to do. And think about how you can respond to the sounds of art and crafts. And if you love drawing, if you love something in a past, you don't have to be good at it. Just do it for fun. Get into arts and crafts. Get back into music and dancing. What music did you used to enjoy if you've forgotten how to enjoy life now? I often say to my clients, well, what did you do in the past that you enjoyed? And how can you do more of that? For a while, I joined a community choir, Brunswick Women's Choir, and that was started by a woman who was a nurse working with women with postnatal depression after having a baby and being stuck at home and not much support. And she realised they needed something fun and something to give them joy. So she started a choir for anyone to join. You didn't have to be good at singing. There's no test or anything. Just join and sing together and have fun together. And that community coming together as a community, well, now only on Zoom, but mostly coming together as a community, supporting each other and singing together and enjoying music together, because music is so emotive. In my class yesterday with basic counselling skills, each person had to think about what was their favourite music, and I put the students in pairs and they shared their favourite piece of music. What favourite piece of music do you have that brings comfort or inspiration? And we talked about that because that's what we can do with our clients or people around us or with our friends, to remind us what music to enjoy that feeds our soul, to give us comfort and inspiration in tough times, particularly tough times like now when we can't get together to go to a music concert, or we can't get together to hang out and have a coffee together. But we can listen to music and remember beautiful times when music has given us solace. And emotive times when we've had good times in our life that music is associated with. Or dancing. Who cares if you can't dance? Just get on one of those dance things on YouTube or an app and enjoy those times. the sounds of sport, the sounds of fishing, the sounds of gardening and cooking. I've been getting more into gardening, and my husband's been getting more into cooking in this lockdown time, with less time for travel and other things. We've got done more on the home front. So that's what we can do with people, help people listen to the sounds of all the sounds of nature, the sounds of music, and the sounds of caring voices around us. We can learn to develop our own story that is a story of hope. So we all have expectations in life. Our stories start with life of one of expectations and hope. And each section of our life, when we start something new, with a new relationship, with a new friend or a new job or a new activity, we have this expectation that it would be good, it would be fantastic. But then in life, as always happens, it starts off well, but then there is some tensions or frustrations or some crisis or some negative times. And that is just part of life, that there will be those. And that's what we have to work through those frustrations and tensions, even in the most beautiful relationships, even in the most beautiful new job that you've got, whatever it is. Or in your studies, it seems so fun at first. There's some times when it gets hard with those assessments and you can feel overwhelmed. And that's when we need to work out, or you feel like you're drowning, or you feel angry or frustrated. That's the time when we need to take time out, breathe, and listen to the positive voices. Find some way of resolving that tension. Listen to the positive voices, listening to the positive sounds of music, listening to the positive sounds of nature, and through that start to find peace and joy again. And when we calm, then work through how we can work through those other things as well, the other tensions in our life. And realize that we have got positive people around us to help us and support us with that, to find our redemptive story of hope, both in nature and in music and whatever else, and in the people around us. And the people around us can help with that hope. And we realize, wow, we have got more to life, and we have got people around us support us. Even when it seems like nothing is happening, something is happening, and we can work with that. So we can come to thinking about how we can have transformative times to transform our lives from those negative voices to the positive voices. And who is the most positive voice as Christians that we know? Or even people that aren't Christians, any people of faith. I've noticed even when I've counselled people that are Muslims and Hindu, when I counselled a lot of asylum seekers for a while, they even recognise that Jesus had a positive voice. It blew my mind, but it was fantastic to realise they too realised that Jesus was a voice of compassion and a compelling voice of reason and justice. And that's the voice we can listen to when we are feeling so overwhelmed with life and with fear and hate. And where do we listen to the voice of Jesus? Often in a church community, in church on Sundays. And we come together with people of different backgrounds, different ages, different experiences, and support each other and realise the joy we can have in supporting each other and finding comfort from each other. And after we've comforted each other, we can go out to the community to make a difference and support others. So we are called to comfort each other in times of need, and then reach out and comfort the larger community in our counselling and in our service, in our mission, missionary work, pastoral work, whatever it is that we're called to do. So we use that time in church services and times with Christian friends to remind us of the gospel stories of Jesus showing compassion to those in need. Jesus only ever got angry at those in power who abused their power by not caring for others. Jesus always showed compassion to those in need and those that had negative voices in their life, and he reached out to them with compassion to help them and to support them. So we are called to do that too, to be caring and compassionate, to walk beside those who are struggling with negative voices, with negative attitudes and negative behaviours, and to help them to listen to the positive, caring voices around them. Oh, just one more little story. One of my students, when she was studying with me, and we were talking about the team of support, how we all need a team of support around us, and we choose who's on our team to support us. And she realised, oh, I've been looking for support in the wrong places. I've been looking for support. And I thought the team should be the people at my work that's supporting me, and I thought it should be my parents, but my parents could never support me, and my workers were too busy doing their own work to ever support me. She was working in the Salvation Army, and they're so focused on others, they forgot to support, so focused on the poor, they forgot to support each other as a team. So she thought, oh, I can put them on the sidelines. I don't have to listen to them. They don't want to listen to me anyway. I'll put them on the sidelines and I'll think about who my real supports are. And she remembered she had a grown-up daughter and some fantastic friends and some fantastic people in her church who she could reach out to support. Pick up the phone and talk to them when you're overwhelmed by the negativity around them. Pick up the phone and talk to people. We talk about how we're socially isolated now, but really we're physically isolated. We can socially still talk to people. We can talk to people on the phone, on Zoom sessions, on FaceTime, all sorts of ways. It's not the same, but hey, we can still get some support. In Zoom church services even, and we can support each other. Even text messages can have amazing support. I've got some clients now go through some very hard times and very difficult marriage breakups, but just a few words of support with a text message, reminding them there are people there to care for them, and they can talk at any time, and we will be there to support each other, and there will be new life. And next year we will have more, and we can still go places and do things and support each other. And so people need to feel valued, and we need to help people feel valued and discard those negative voices and listen to the positive voices of hope. We need people to feel valued so they can give value. We need to help others feel like they are valued, there are positive voices, and we can have the voice of Jesus and the sense of presence of Jesus and the comfort of Jesus to then reach out and help others. One of my students this week, one of my master students, reminded me of a beautiful verse of scripture of how to think about how to think of those positive voices. And it's Philippians 4 verse 8 that I've got here on the screen. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is honourable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any moral excellence, if there is anything praiseworthy, dwell on these things. Aren't they beautiful words? If we want to do good things and feel good about ourselves, we need to fill our minds and fill our souls with good things. I remember one time I was talking to a client who was in a terrible bad space. He was a Christian and he sometimes did some pastoral work, but he was really struggling with horrible negative voices from his past and his childhood where he's made to do unspeakable things. And I asked him, what do you do? And he's having trouble sleeping. What do you do in the evenings? He goes, I watch horror movies. I go, oh, if I watched horror movies, I wouldn't be able to sleep either. That's so negative. So he stopped doing that and he's able to sleep better. Then when he really struggled and he struggled with suicidal thoughts, he said, what gives you joy? What gives you peace? And he said, oh, I have my favorite Christian song, In Christ Alone, or whatever it was. Maybe that was the one. In Christ alone, I have life and I have faith. And so each time he feel bad, we would get him to play that, and that would get him through. So it's about filling your minds with good things and positive things and honourable things. Whatever is honourable, whatever is true, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, whatever is of moral excellence, whatever is praiseworthy, dwell on these things. So we had those beautiful words from Scripture from Paul, who's really summing up the beautiful words and message of Jesus. And that's what we can take with us for our own lives in our work with people that we care for.
Well, thank you so much, Julie. That was really encouraging, and I think not only for us as we care for people, but also for ourselves in this time as well. So thank you for that.